All right, let's jump right in. We're going to take a look at a biblical phrase you've probably heard a million times, but we're going to explore a really fascinating argument that treats it less like poetry and more like a fundamental law of physics.
So the source material we're digging into really focuses on this one super direct statement. The whole idea hangs on that tiny little word is. Not is like light, not that light is a symbol for God. No, it's a statement of identity. God is light.
And that's really the big question we're looking at today. Is this just a beautiful, poetic way of describing something divine? Or, as this particular argument goes, is it actually a statement about the nature of reality itself? One that could have huge implications for, well, everything.
Okay, so the first part of this whole idea is that this phrase is totally unique. It's not just another nice comparison. It's being presented as a declaration of being, what you might call an ontological identity. It's about what God is.
Think about it. The Bible is just packed with metaphors, right? God is a rock, a fortress, a consuming fire. But the argument here is that those are all metaphors that help us understand a concept. God is light, on the other hand, is presented as something different. It's not a comparison. It's more like a definition of God's most basic nature.
So, now we get to the second part of the argument. And this is where things get really interesting, because it jumps from the theology straight into the world of science. You know, if God really is light, then maybe understanding the physics of light is key to understanding the nature of God. And the argument starts with one of the most bedrock laws in all of science, the first law of thermodynamics. It basically says energy is constant. You can't make it from scratch, and you can't get rid of it. You can only change it from one form to another.
Well, this leads to a pretty stunningly simple conclusion. Light is a form of energy, right? And if energy can't be created or destroyed, then from a pure physics standpoint, light is eternal. It has no beginning and no end. It just is. Sound familiar?
And it gets even deeper and, frankly, weirder when you bring Einstein into it. According to his theory of relativity, for a particle of light, a photon, time literally doesn't pass. From its own point of view, the moment it leaves a star a billion light years away and the moment it hits your eyeball are the exact same instant. It exists completely outside of time as we experience it, which is a perfect match for the classic theological concept of eternity.
Okay, so if light is eternal and uncreated, what in the world does that mean for the creation story in Genesis? This is where the whole idea starts to reinterpret some really core theological concepts.
We all know this line, and we usually think of it as God just whipping up the substance of light out of thin air. But this framework, it suggests something completely different is going on.
The argument is that this wasn't God building something new. I mean, if God is light, and light is eternal, then God couldn't really create it, could he? So maybe this moment is better understood as God expressing his own eternal nature into the physical universe for the first time. It wasn't a moment of fabrication, it was a moment of revelation.
And this way of thinking reframes other ideas too. Take the title Firstborn of all creation, which is used to describe Christ. This model argues it doesn't mean the first creature that was made. It could mean the first manifestation, the very first expression of the eternal God, who is light, inside the created world.
So this brings up a huge question, right? If God's nature is expressed as these consistent physical laws, then what about miracles? Does God have to break his own rules to make them happen?
Well, according to this view, no. Miracles aren't a violation of law at all. They're more like a higher-order expression of that very same law. The idea is that Jesus walking on water isn't physics being broken, it's the law of density responding to its own author. A resurrection isn't biology being ignored, it's biology returning to its ultimate source of life. The laws of physics aren't chains that bind God, they're the fingerprints of his own consistent nature. This quote from the source material just sums it up perfectly. You know, for the universe to be stable and predictable, the lawgiver behind it has to be stable and consistent. In this model, God acting against his own laws would be a contradiction of his own being, which would be, well, impossible.
And now we've arrived at the most audacious, the most out there part of the argument. This is a direct mapping of Einstein's most famous equation, E equals mc squared, onto the structure of the Christian Trinity.
Okay, let's break this down piece by piece. The argument connects E for energy with the spirit, in Hebrew ruach, or Greek pneuma, which means breath, or the animating life force. Then it connects M for mass, you know, the stuff of reality, with the word, or logos.
And finally, c squared, the speed of light squared, that ultimate universal constant, is connected to God the Father, the eternal constant who is light.
So, what's the takeaway from all this? The implication is that the very word universe might be pointing us to this reality. It's not just a collection of stuff, it's a universe, a single song, a single spoken verse, all structured by the unchanging nature of the one who is light.
And that kind of leaves us with one final big thought to chew on. If this framework holds any water, and if reality really is this single, coherent expression of one underlying nature, then what is that verse saying to us? What's the message that's encoded into the very fabric of existence? Something to think about.